First sentence. For 5 centuries, our European ancestors were forced by popes and tsars to live in segregated, 100% Jewish ghettos. After 1967, the Jewish government in Israel recreated ghettos on the opposite side of the Green Line. Question. In the long run, wouldn't it make more sense, wouldn't it be more beneficial for both Israeli Jews and Palestinian Arabs to create a two-state solution positive, not on continued separation of the two peoples, but on the basis of binational existence, including conversion of 100% Jewish ghettos into binational communities, leaving people where they are?
Okay, who wants to take that? It looks like everybody does. I'm going to start with Laura, and then we'll move to the right, not ideologically, geographically.
I love being on the far left. I'm rarely on the left on panels these days. That's true. I appreciate the question, and I think it speaks to a lot of us as Americans. The way we think about things, we should all live together, and it's tolerance and coexistence. I think the reality is that what is needed right now between Israelis and Palestinians, and I'm plagiarizing Danny Seidemann, they need a divorce. Once there is a divorce, then over time people can learn to live together. They can learn to attend their children's bar mitzvahs, weddings, confirmations together. They can learn to share family holidays. They can learn to stay with each other when they visit each other's towns. However that works. Right now, after so many years of conflict and so many years of, and I hate this word, but it's mutual delegitimization. I grew up in the era where, there are no Palestinians. This is, in this, the mutual disrespect and delegitimization is so extraordinary. And I will say, as someone who's covered the settlement issue for almost 20 years, for me, the starting point is that we want to ask Palestinians to accept the settlements and then move in and live next door to Israelis. It defies the reality on the ground. The settlements are built on land that Palestinians believe was stolen from them with force. The starting point is a peace agreement that deals with that. If the ending point later on, Yariv talked about Hebron. I would love to imagine a day in a peace agreement when there are Jews living in Hebron. It's not going to be the Jews who are living there now. It's going to be Jews who are prepared to live in peace with Palestinian neighbors under Palestinian sovereignty. Those are not the Jews who are there now. But I hope in my heart that that day will come when people can live together. But first there needs to be a divorce, and everyone, as again, plagiarizing Danny, coming back and meeting each other at eye level, not as occupier and occupied.
When I'm hearing the argument about one state or two states but living together, I can think about it, but I have one question that I have to get an answer in order to support this idea. And the question is, what will be the immigration law to the new place? Is it going to be like today, that every Jewish person around the world can come and make Aliyah and become an Israeli? Or maybe it's going to be the Palestinian refugees that will be able to come to their house. When we are talking about a political struggle, we are talking about also who is going to become a citizen and who is going to get land. And I don't see a solution for that. Because today in Israel, the one major thing that ensures that Israel will stay a Zionist, the result of the Zionist movement, is the Chok HaShvut, the law that allows only Jews to come and to live in Israel and to get almost immediately citizenship. What will be the future of this law? Is it going to be for Jews or for Palestinians? And there is no an answer for that, because the answer will be, it will be a democratic decision. And, even if everyone will live side by side, eventually democratically, the Zionist dream will be cancelled. So, in my point of view, the only way, and I would like to imagine that we can live side by side. By the way, we are living side by side. Inside Israel, there is a huge minority of Israeli Arab. Some of them call themselves Palestinian living in Israel. It depends with whom you are speaking with. And there is coexistence that I hope will be much better in many ways, and it's a different topic for a different discussion. But if we are talking about the two people, the Palestinians and the Israelis eventually living in one state, how you can decide who will be allowed in, and how you can keep the essence of Israel as the Jewish homeland for the Jewish people.
And Danny, did you want to?
No, I'm here as an Israeli patriot, but my real home and homeland is the city of Jerusalem. It's a living organism that's much more complicated than any of the ideologies that purport to explain it, including my own. And I know that if my dream comes true, my beloved city, it's not a likable city, but it's a lovable city, is going to be scarred by a border. I'm going to have to present a passport at a border crossing in order to visit my friends in Sheikh Jarrah and the Shuafat refugee camp, and they'll have to present a passport to visit mine. That will scar the city of Jerusalem. But I can make you a promise. The day that border goes up is the day that that border begins to unravel. The two-state solution is not the end. It's it's a transformation of the conflict. It's a rephrasing of the conflict. 10, 20 years, when life takes over from the ideologues and the politicians, Jerusalem can be one of the most remarkable places on the planet. But we need to complete the divorce in order for reconciliation to commence.
To Dan or Tim, and beyond if you want, the parameters of the Ariel block, the road going through the kind of block, what does that look like in shaping a border, and is the Geneva Trade of Male Adumim for Ariel still one of the feasible outcomes?
Okay, personally I hate the concept of that trade between Ma'ale Adumim and Ariel. Ma'ale Adumim being the third biggest settlement in the West Bank, that I'm highlighting just east of Jerusalem, and Ariel being the fourth biggest settlement in the West Bank, roughly 18,000 people right here in the heart of Samaria. And I don't like that phrasing because from the Palestinian perspective, well, you stole two things, now you're going to trade me one for the other, and to keep that. So they don't like it, and it's hard to sell it to them that way. Having said that, the reason why I think most of us here, at least, assume that Ma'ale Adumim will remain part of Israel, and that Ariel won't, is for two reasons. First of all, Ma'ale Adumim is much bigger in population, roughly 37,000 settlers live there now, and two, their geographic proximity to the 1967 line. Ma'ale Adumim is located problematically. It overlooks the connection between the northern West Bank and the southern West Bank, but it is roughly 5 kilometers from the 1967 lines, and even shorter distance from the nearest Israeli presence in East Jerusalem, Mount Scopus, which was actually part of Israel prior to 1967, but we won't go there now. Ariel, however, is 20 kilometers into the West Bank. Now, if you look very briefly at, let's say, the Israeli proposal in the Annapolis negotiation, you can see a robust, kind of two-finger approach to the annexation of the Ariel bloc, Ariel being the settlement most intrusive into Palestine together with Kadumim right here. And that's why, personally, I'm doubtful if that would fly with the Palestinians and anybody else who looks at the viability and contiguity of Palestine. Ma'ale Adumim right here is much simpler to do in a more humble way. For example, the Geneva Initiative of 2003 has the annexation of Ma'ale Adumim to Israel based only on a road in a way that maintains at least robust Palestinian contiguity north and south to it. So that's in short.
Okay, great. We're going to have time for one more question. I do want to say that all of our panelists are going to be here for the next few days. You should seek them out. You should continue to ask them your questions if you don't get any questions answered today. Let's go with this woman right here. I apologize for those of you that didn't get your questions answered.
It's naive, Pollyannish, but if we can evacuate Hebron, why can't
Okay, Danny, we'll start with you on that one.
This ends when you're able to get simultaneously one agreement that's supported by the political centers of both Israel and Palestine. When I go out and around and show my Israeli compatriots what this means for Israel, it means that for 195,000 settlers in East Jerusalem, not only will they not be uprooted, they don't change the way they go to work. And to boot, they get a Saudi and a Tunisian embassy down the road, which I consider to be the crowning achievement of Zionism. Recognition of an Israeli capital with deep Jewish attachments is far more important than the territorial imperatives of another 1,000 units in Ramat Shlomo. If, on the other hand, I have to go out and say, oh, I'm only going to be uprooting 40,000 of you in Jerusalem. No, it does not make the two-state solution irretrievably lost. I agree with Yariv on that. It makes it infinitely more difficult, and the only thing that will create the political will necessary to uproot tens or hundreds of thousands of Israelis in Jerusalem is blood.
Okay, so good news. We're going until 9:30. Let's move over to this side of the room. I don't think we've got any questions over here and towards the back. Yes, let's go with this gentleman in the black jacket.
Thank you. Danny, you spoke eloquently about the fact that this isn't elective surgery, it's emergency intervention. And given that, and given the imperative apparently of some type of evacuation vis-a-vis Hebron, which definitely will be bloody, at what point are we talking about the will that is going to be necessary and the pressure that will be necessary, and what type of pressure would any of you foresee might be forthcoming?
Okay, while you guys are passing the microphone, I'm going to start with a couple of comments there, because in talking about pressure, I think one of the number of us were at a dinner with Abu Mazen last week, hosted by the Daniel Abraham Center for Middle East Peace, and one of the questions that I wanted to ask that I didn't get out was wanting to hear something about the will of all of the parties involved, because the one thing that we know is going to be happening from now until the time that hopefully there's an agreement is there is going to be on both sides an increase in violence from those that don't want an agreement. And so we're going to, what we need to be hoping for is that all of the parties are willing politically and otherwise to resist that. I think on the other side as well, the good news is that over 70% of both peoples want a two-state solution. If you ask it line by line, dividing, East Jerusalem being the capital of the Palestinian state, or the issue of right of return, you're not going to get a majority. But every time when polling is done, and I should say also for American Jews and Palestinian Americans or Arab Americans, when you ask the question, where you give the entire package, whether it's the roadmap or the Clinton parameters, when you give the entire package an end of conflict, over 70% of all of those participants in the polls will say that they would support it. We're confident that would happen in the event of a referendum or an agreement as well.